We've said this plenty of times. Planet Earth is fully alive and it's always going through changes. So when you're living on it, you can't treat it like it's something dead. This time, it showed itself in Taiwan. On the 3rd of April 2024 at 7:58 a.m., a 7.5 on the Richter scale earthquake happened on the eastern part of Taiwan. At the time we're recording this video, about 10 people have been killed, more than 1,000 people have been injured, and 152 people are trapped. Experts believe that this is just the beginning and these numbers will rise. This was a very severe earthquake and it pretty much shook the entire island of Taiwan. And the thing that makes it even more terrifying, there has been 44 aftershocks after this earthquake happened, and the most violent one was 6.5 on the Richter scale. You have to know, on the eastern part of the world, Japan is very prone to earthquakes. Taiwan is very close and they're no different than Japan. There are a lot of earthquakes happening here as well. And the last violent one happened in the year 1999, 25 years ago. This was a 7.7 on the Richter scale, and it killed more than 2,400 people. But what makes it even more terrifying, more than 50,000 buildings were destroyed because of it. At that time, more than $10 billion of damages were reported. But the Taiwan today is much different than the one in 1999, because after this massive earthquake happened, every single building code changed to make it so it can stand against earthquakes. You could say somewhat they got their ideas from Japan, because in Japan there's earthquakes all the time and no buildings fall. And that's because of the engineering used to build them. It costs a lot more money, but when earthquakes happen, they don't collapse and you have to start all over. If you know how the Earth works, you know there are a bunch of tectonic plates around it. And you have to know, in part of Taiwan, the Eurasia plate and the Philippines plate literally meet in the middle of Taiwan. And that's what makes this island very prone to earthquakes. These two plates are always putting pressure on one another, and that what caused the mountain ranges to form in the island of Taiwan. Each year, 75 millimeters are added to the mountain ranges because that's how much pressure these plates put on one another. This is seen in many countries that are prone to earthquakes. Like in Afghanistan, there was a recent earthquake, or a couple years ago there was an earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and these are all mountainous countries with fault lines running through them. Even the formation of this island was because of these tectonic plates. Geologists believe about 5 million years ago, these plates put pressure on one another, and that formed this island. So Taiwan is extremely new compared to other islands around the world. Taiwan is a very new island, but if you compare it to the age of planet Earth, not humans. Right now, Taiwan is a very important country, even though some argue that Taiwan belongs to China, but we're not here to argue about that. If you've seen our video about World War microchip, you'll know that Taiwan is the most important country in producing high-quality microchips. And this alone makes this country extremely important. And the problems with the US and China are always over Taiwan. And most of that is because of the technology that's in Taiwan. Neither country wants the opposition to have power there because they can control the world's microchips. The Americans put all their effort and money into the microchips in Taiwan, and they don't want China to take over and have all that power around the world. And of course, the Chinese don't want Taiwan to be taken by the Westerners because they believe the island belongs to mainland China. But right now, this is just a Cold War, because both sides know if they mess around too much, they can pretty much destroy the whole world. At 7:58, when the earthquake happens, the Taiwanese immediately reported to the Philippines that there's going to be a huge tsunami coming your way because the earthquake happened on the eastern part of the island and the first shore is the Philippines. They said the tsunami could be as high as 3 meters high, so they were forced to evacuate all beaches. But thankfully, the waves that reached the Philippines was only 3 meters, and that's because the earthquake happens inland rather than in the ocean, so a tsunami was not formed. The time the earthquake happens made sure a lot of people weren't killed because most people were going to work, and a lot of people were already at work or awake. The interesting part is that most of the people that were killed because of this earthquake weren't because of falling buildings. They were actually because of falling stuff around the house or workplace. Like for example, a TV fell off and hit them. This is why a lot of people suggest if you live in an area that's prone to earthquakes, don't leave stuff above you because there's a high chance that these things can be shaken off and fall on your head. You could survive the earthquake, but just because a pot was above you and it hit you in the head, it could kill you. But this earthquake did show us one thing. The Taiwanese really knew what they were doing because they learned a lot after the 1999 earthquake. 25 years ago, more than 50,000 buildings were destroyed in Taiwan, but yesterday's earthquake only destroyed 125 buildings. These earthquakes destroy road system and bridges as well, because it's like a wave and it literally lifts these road systems up, especially bridges, and destroys them. And more than 36 roadways in Taiwan have been destroyed. The biggest building that's pretty much destroyed and it has to be taken down is this, called the Uranus. It hasn't fell down yet, but they have to bring it down one way or another. Thankfully, the people that were inside this building could easily escape and nobody was hurt because of this. After this earthquake happened, the Taiwanese government asked mainland China for help. And of course, they were very willing to help because they think they're part of the country. But after this, the US also provided help for Taiwan because they didn't want to be left out. They also sent a lot of Japanese geologists and earthquake experts to come examine the area and teach the locals on what's the best way to repair so something like this will never happen again. Until now, the aftershocks are still coming, and unfortunately, the people that are injured and killed will probably rise every single day.